Welcome everyone, this is Andre's Restart, and today I would like to talk about how we may be getting two new systems next year. One being the Nintendo Switch 2, and another being a revision for the Switch 1 family. There's been a few different things popping up recently that we've touched on in different videos over the last couple of days, but when you put it together, it starts to paint this picture of there being two systems coming out next year, and it's a bit interesting to me, so that's what I'd like to talk about today. You may notice that my voice is still a little sore, but it's a little bit more recovered than it was yesterday, but please bear with me. Now before we get into things, I will point out that we are aiming to reach 50,000 subscribers, so if you do enjoy my content, please subscribe and hit the notification bell, and enjoy the ride as we talk about Nintendo every day. So for the most part, we've been assuming that Switch 2 is coming out next year. We have the different reports, there's a number of different signs. Nothing's confirmed at this point, so you never know for sure. But that is the assumption most of us are operating under for now. But recently, a lot of conversation sprung up about us getting a Switch Mini. And this idea has been conveyed by Nash Weedle on Twitter. Now, Nash Weedle has a history of talking about some things that do actually happen, such as Metroid Dread, or there being Switch 2 dev kits out there. We found out about these things from other places after Nash Weedle talked about it. So a lot of videos came out last week talking about a Switch Mini when Nash Weedle started talking about this. Now, Nash Weedle on Twitter made it a prediction, not a leak, and he does differentiate between the two. So I wouldn't necessarily say that Nash Weedle's leaking here, but he did point out that there are several patents that came out around the same time that seem to be indicating some type of newer, smaller Switch. And I actually do agree with this line of thinking somewhat here. I'm not sure how much credence I want to put on the patents themselves, but what I do think makes sense is to expect for Nintendo to put out another revision for the Switch that is a cheaper, perhaps also more comfortable model. And one of the reasons why I believe this is because there's already a history of Nintendo doing this. When the Nintendo DS came out, we got the Game Boy Micro. At the end of Nintendo's Wii life, we had a smaller sized Nintendo Wii. When the Nintendo Switch came out, a few months later, Nintendo announced the new Nintendo 2DS XL. So we've seen different revisions come out around the same time as a next generation console. And the way this has been handled, these revisions are cheaper, smaller, more comfortable models that are not being aimed for those that want the most premium, most powerful Nintendo device. They're being aimed at people who want something a bit cheaper. They want to enjoy the vast library that has existed over the last half decade or so. So the new 2DS XL was one of the best examples of this. You could buy this in 2017 and be able to enjoy things like Samus Returns, Ocarina of Time 3D, A Link Between Worlds, Mario Kart 7, Fire Emblem Echoes, the list goes on. And so this idea of a smaller, more comfortable Switch revision being announced next year, and it in no way is suggestive of Switch 2 not coming out next year. I think both can happen, because we've seen both happen several times in the past. And it actually would be supportive of the idea, because this would be something that would be meant to facilitate more of a transition, offering different price points for different types of consumers. And it also falls in line somewhat with the idea that as Nintendo transitions from the Switch to the Switch 2, they're going to want to lower the price point of the Switch, and perhaps one way to do that is simply by releasing a new model that is cheaper, while they phase out some of the existing models that are currently on the market. And this might be a good way for Nintendo to help sort of maintain that perceived high value that is the Switch. I still find it remarkable that throughout this entire generation we haven't seen a single official price drop. Yes, you may find some price discounts in different venues, yes there have been bundles, but you go on Nintendo's website, you go to most stores, the main price point is still the main price point. Hasn't changed. Now, this all may be well and good, but recently a little bit more information has come up that has got a lot of people excited about Switch 2 because it seems to be suggesting that Nintendo will indeed be going with an OLED screen again for the Switch 2. And the reason this is exciting is because not everyone was assuming there would be an OLED screen in the Switch 2 because rumors were suggesting otherwise. Now, technically, we still don't know if the Switch 2 is going to have an OLED screen. And we talked a little bit about this report yesterday, but I want to go at it from a slightly different perspective here. So let me reread this part here to you. Nintendo's reportedly in talks with Samsung Display to supply next-generation OLED panels for various IT devices. On December 1st, 2023, Nintendo reportedly asked Samsung Display to supply OLED panels. So what's interesting here is that this is recent information, and Nintendo's looking to get next-generation OLED panels for various IT devices. So when they say next-generation OLED, I believe that implies that this would be a newer OLED panel than the ones we have in the current Switch OLED model. So why would Nintendo want newer screens for newer devices, or at least a newer device? And this is where things get a little interesting, because some people think, okay, yeah, we'll get Switch 2, but we're not going to get a revision the same year, even though history suggests otherwise. And then some people think, yeah, we'll get a Switch Mini, but not Switch 2. Here, this report says panels for various IT devices. Various means more than one. Different types of devices. And so, when we talk about the history of Nintendo putting out a revision in the same year as the release of a next generation console, and we talk about everything we've heard about Switch 2 coming out next year, and now this recent conversation that does seem to support the idea of a revision, a cheaper revision also coming out next year, when you factor this report alongside of it, it supports it more strongly. So currently, I am thinking that we may very well be getting Switch 2 next year, and it will have an OLED panel. But also, we're going to be getting a smaller, more comfortable Switch that has a cheaper price point that will also have an OLED panel. And this brings me to maybe my final point here. A lot of people have been like, well, a Switch Mini sounds stupid because we already have the Switch Lite. It's already a smaller, cheaper, more comfortable model of the Switch. In some ways, yes, because it is ergonomic, it is small, it does have solid battery life, but you can't dock it. And that definitely offers less value. Of course, it is cheaper, so it does sort of add up there. But the Switch Lite came out in 2019. It has become dated. Perhaps Nintendo wants to offer a Switch Lite, but a newer version that has an OLED screen. And this is actually something that many have speculated for a while already, that eventually they would update the Switch Lite to a newer version of it that would have an OLED screen. And maybe that's what this talk of a Switch Mini is. It'll be a Switch Lite that's been revised, maybe slightly smaller, maybe better battery life, with an OLED screen, and maybe even a more attractive price point. These are possibilities, and I would say it makes a decent amount of sense. When might it be announced? That's up for debate because it comes down to when Nintendo wants to announce Switch 2. Let's say by a season or two. And to close out, I'll just say, we don't know what's going to happen. But if I were to be placing any bets, right now I am thinking that, similar to how it's happened in prior generations several times in the past from Nintendo, I'm expecting that we are going to get a next generation console next year, but also a cheaper revision as well. And this report here suggests that they both may have OLED screens, which I think would be pretty nice. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. This is Andres Restart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.